Okay, hey, first I just want to say big kudos to both of you for running and putting yourself out there into the public space. It is, with social media, become a much different process than what I remember when we started doing endorsements way back when. So really appreciate the work and willingness to put in the service for the community. Keri, we'll start with you. Why don't you just introduce yourself and say why you're running?
Yeah, sure. Do I need to look at you? Or
Around, it doesn't matter.
Okay. So I am Keri Lopez, and I'm running because initially I started looking into what was happening in the national news, right? And I'm thinking, none of this is happening in our schools, in our communities, and I got curious. And when I started asking those questions and started getting answers, I either got answers I wasn't comfortable with, didn't know enough about, or I didn't really get the answers at all. And so I'm very curious and I wanted to know more. And once I started learning more, I was like, oh wait, hold on, like we need a little balance here.
Great. Okay. Emerson?
Yeah, and sorry, the question is why are you running?
Just introduce yourself,
okay.
Say why you're running.
Absolutely. So I'm Emerson Levy, a current state representative for this district, and I've always said that the future of our future and safety of our kiddos has always been my North Star in this process. I think that's really important to always know what's guiding you through the legislative process. But I think that the really good question is what keeps you running and wanting to stay in the process, right? Because you always have the thing in the beginning of why you get started, but why stay? And I truly love it. I love this community. I love that I spent my summer rewriting foreclosure law for the state. There's so much good work to do to help people, and I never know what our constituents are going to bring to me. I have dealt with HOA hot tub rules to reforming insurance law. It's truly a love of public service and a love of this community, and the more I serve it, the more I love our community and all the different people and all the quirky things that come up during the day. But I've really seen that our laws do change lives, and we have an amazing ability to make impact, even in small ways. We're not perfect, but I do believe that we're a legislature that truly cares and comes together.
Great, thank you.
So back to Emerson to start for this one. What are the biggest issues for you this year, and how would you tackle those in your position in the legislature?
Yeah, so we put together 23 bills for concepts, but I would say my big focus going into this next session, outside of my committee work, which is energy, which I do, I focus a lot on energy policy, but my personal is making sure that we have youth mental health beds here. So right now, there are no acute mental health beds, and our stabilization center isn't really serving our kiddos. So the average age we just did a tour of the ER, and I've been talking to parents around the state about their experience. So there's only one room in the ER that can be like a hold room, and a kid is considered suicidal, even maybe if they're not. They're on a watch if they're in the ER, so they can't even go to the bathroom alone, and so that just ramps up their anxiety. And we're seeing that age of the kid coming in declining. It's getting younger and younger. And our ER staff is saying we're not equipped to do this. So it's about $8 million. And we have a private-public partnership, but we do need a bill to run it. That would be for Central Oregon bed. It would be more for an Eastern Oregon bed. There's also not even safe transport to Portland for our kids that are in acute mental distress. A lot of our kids are coming in through the foster system that might have reactive attachment disorders, so they could be a harm to themselves and their families. And that is really my main focus, is to make sure that we have those acute beds in place, obviously upstream things as well. And then on the Measure 110 front, I really want to make sure that we're moving upstream. And so I am bringing a bill that is very similar to Michigan and Minnesota, which were hit pretty hard by the opioid crisis, that it is a non-opioid directive. So it's separate from your directive and your advanced healthcare directive, but it would be in conjunction with. So it's a separate sheet of paper that says, like, if you're a 35-year-old mom in a car accident, you would already have had that conversation with your primary care doctor. If I'm incapacitated, I don't want an opioid, because 45% in the country of fentanyl addiction start with prescription. And so how can we get in front of that? And And so it's been really successful in Michigan and Minnesota, and they've been really innovative on the non-opioid care. So those are my two main goals. And then on the energy side with the committee work is really making sure that we're meeting our energy plan. So the energy plan is being drafted right now. And it's just going to be a really big challenge because our energy loads and demands, for me, this is the issue, is our data centers are important. They bring incredible economic growth, but they are creating a huge demand on our energy. And this is an issue throughout the country. And so how can we make sure that we are increasing our energy loads, our ability to produce energy, without making it all go on the ratepayer? And so that's, if Amazon's here, they're paying for part of the energy, and they are. And so making sure that we are constantly engaging and that we're constantly with the Department of Energy, making sure we're meeting our energy plan. And so I'm bringing a clean tech manufacturing bill. I think I've gone over my 2 minutes, I'm so sorry. And then also...
We're learning a lot, it's okay.
Sorry, my team says I
It's
put
okay,
people
we
to
give Keri, we monitor, we
Okay.
give the same amount.
Okay, you'll get the same amount,
But
sorry.
I will hook you in about 5.
Okay, sorry.
5 seconds?
My team tells me I put people to sleep, sorry. Okay, so that, and then making sure that we're energy efficiency is the low-hanging fruit that we still have not fully tapped.
Great. Thank you.
All right. We want to repeat the question?
No, I think I'm okay.
Okay.
So I'm really glad that Emerson mentioned mental health and particularly for kids, because as a school board member, what I'm seeing and hearing, the things that are going on in our schools with kids and mental health, our schools are actually being, I don't want to say forced to deal with, but we are, right? So all of the issues that are in, that are in kids' homes or in the environment, those things come into our schools and into our classrooms. So, and quite frankly, something struck a chord with me when you said you were visiting the emergency rooms in the hospitals. Our schools, quite frankly, aren't equipped to serve these kids well either. So it's really important that we find the balance between what community services can offer and what our schools can offer. I think that's a really important bridge that we need to gap that we need to bridge.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I think that when I'm on the doors, the other things that I'm hearing are, cost of living, housing, wildfires, those types of things. I'm hearing businesses, leaving, particularly the Portland area. Friends and family are leaving Oregon because it's not a business-friendly environment and it's hard to afford to live here. So I think those are some of the things that we also need to be paying attention to.
Great. And so I'm going to start with you. You just mentioned housing. So our next question kind of addresses that. How do you plan to address challenges related to housing affordability and houselessness in the district?
Sure. As a home builder, it's really important to make sure that your jobs from start to finish have a really short and tight timeline. And it's different, of course, when you're building a spec home versus a custom home. And really, you need to have short timelines in order from start to finish. So and the reality is, it costs money. Every day costs money. If you're borrowing money, it costs money. So we need to reduce the time it takes to get a permit from start to finish. Infrastructure. I followed up last night one of the affordable housing projects that started in North Redmond in Vicki Breeze-Iverson's district. Started in 2019. They're not going to break ground until next year. I think that's right. It's either the end of this year or next year. And so that's a long time, and it's a lot of money, and it's a lot of need that's not being met. And I realize that...
Is that red tape?
Yeah,
Preventing it?
it's the state that works. And Emerson, you might be able to speak to this. You might be a little more ingrained in this. But the reality is, it's land use laws, right? It's urban growth boundaries. So if it really is about building homes, then let's build homes, right? Why does it take 5-10 years to get money out the door even? Like, I think, Emerson, you said last night that you're able to get money, but getting it out the door, like, why does it take so long? those are the things that, like, when you were talking about your why and you love doing this, right? I do as well, and the part that keeps me in this and keeps me going is that I want to figure out why. Why does it take so long? If there's a better solution, great. If there's not, fine. But for me, my curiosity leads me to the place where I want to figure those things out. And if somebody has a question for me, I can be able to come back and say, okay, this is really what's happening. This is not happening. And this is where we are, and this is why.
So do you see yourself in the legislature working on, altering land use laws? Is that kind of what you would like to work on?
I think it's something that we need. I mean, if that's really the issue, right? Like, if it's that the North Point project is just outside the urban growth boundary. So if that's really the issue, and even like the governor said that she wouldn't allow a managed camp outside the urban growth boundary. If the issue is urgent, we need to have all options on the table to deal with these urgent issues. And maybe it's not a long-term thing. Maybe it's, a short-term thing. But if it's urgent, if these matters are urgent, let's deal with them and let's talk about the issues and how we can solve them in an urgent manner.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
Which is how we addressed housing affordability.
Yeah, and houselessness.
And houselessness. Okay, so I think Keri and I are pretty aligned on housing. So with the housing, we passed the largest housing package in Oregon's history. And part of that bill was actually addressing procurement to make sure that we have money out the door. And that was a really important issue. And this is something that we're going to continue to focus on in the legislature. So that was the first time that money was out within 3 months, because there was you had to already be in the procurement process. And with North Point, just to address that before going on, so the issue was infrastructure, because it was a UGB lot, it was a pilot program, and so we just allocated $7 million for infrastructure, because everything we're building in there is not naturally affordable. So it is an investment project that had to have additional infrastructure that was not anticipated. So the housing package allocates money to build all sorts of projects, including the LIFT process. So in our district, 77 homes were allocated. So those are kind of like the project in Sisters, where it was teacher housing, where he bought in, I think, at $250 or something like that. So we have 77 of those projects coming. And then I have a bill that I'm working with Habitat for Humanity, which makes the LIFT process a little easier. And again, not to put us to sleep, but the underwriting process was quite off. So with our bill, Freddie and Fannie Mae could underwrite it, and it could be sold on a secondary market, which the way that it's constructed now, it can't be. So we're fixing that, which is really important, and that opens up the market in a big way. And so that allows us to have those more workforce housing pencil better, even though it will take a complex financial stack. And the other second thing that we have to deal with housing is wildfire insurance. And so I'm also bringing a bill that separates the ISO definition between fire and wildfire, which will allow for those to be different risk factors. And we're seeing this a little bit on a national trend. I think we'd be the first state to do it. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure. But this would just create, so either you have wildfire risk or you have fire risk, so two different insurance. So hopefully that would bring the insurance down. And we're also looking at condo reform, because we think that condos are a big part of the missing middle. I mean, that's how my husband and I, we first, had something small, and then we used that to buy a single family home. And right now, because of liability, condos are really, really difficult. And also, so shelter funding, we've stabilized shelter funding. I think I have gray hair over that. I can't tell you what a challenge it's been, because OCHS just wanted to do beds only, right? Just pay for the beds. And that doesn't work, because as we all know, we have people at the Lighthouse that are on hospice care there. Like, it requires administrative fees, and it has just been an absolute fight, but we got there. We just got there really recently to make sure that we can use our city contracting process just to make this like a more stable long-term process, because shelter is part of getting people to long-term homelessness, but also, 50% of our homelessness is pretty much unseen, and people have children. So we're addressing two different issues, and so part of that housing package is making sure that we have rental assistance for that family to keep in their apartment. I'll stop talking.
Thanks.
I just had a really quick follow-up question on that, if that's okay.
Sure.
When you mentioned the wildfire insurance being separate from fire, how does that tie into the maps and the recent legislation that was
Yeah, so
passed?
the maps cannot be used for insurance. That is part of the bill. And they don't, in fact, use them because they have their own maps. There's 2 providers. Kind of feels like a black box, to be honest. We've sat down with insurance providers. They outsource to 2 providers that give them basically their underwriting authority and say yes or no. So not connected. That map is really supposed to be for grants to see where we need to do prescribed burns and things like that. But our insurance companies they're simply not using the wildfire maps. But I would like to have more transparency to know why they're saying yes or no, but that has also been a challenge, and it's been a challenge for people selling insurance. They're struggling too.
I would just say
Yeah.
that one of the issues that needs to be addressed is just smart forest management, right? So I think the insurance companies probably started out using those maps, and now what we're seeing is their insurance companies are dropping thousands of people. In fact, I probably need to look into it myself. I think our insurance went up too. So so thanks for working on that. But a piece of that is also smart forest management.
I think we do have a question. Do we have that on here?
I don't know, but we can ask it.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, let's move on and then we'll see how it works then.
Okay. All right, so the next question is about going back to regarding schools. Schools are struggling with declining enrollment numbers, chronic absenteeism, and ranking among the worst in the nation. How, and I think this is for you. Yeah, yours to start first. So how would you address the issue?
Wait, no, Emerson starts first.
Emerson starts first?
Yeah,
okay.
She was second.
Oh, I thought I was, okay, sorry.
Okay. How would you address the issue of funding and measure success for schools in the district?
This is such a challenging question, and Keri pointed out something that I think bears worth repeating, is that a lot of really tough issues are being brought into the schools, and so we are asking a lot of our teachers and our staff. So, we passed the largest budget, but that was after years of disinvestment. So part of it is money, but not all of it, right? So it's also making sure that we are getting the dollars to early literacy and that we're accountable for all of those dollars, and making sure that our special ed, and this will be one of the big focuses of the next session, is making sure that the special ed is funded. We know right now a lot of our high medical needs are only reimbursed around 30%. So in that case, it's really a funding issue. But for absenteeism, I think issues like cell phones, like we've talked about before, helps. Rep Win is putting together an entire package on absenteeism to address this issue. It is so complex. I think having free meals helps with absenteeism. But how do we get our kids that are struggling back into schools? And then also making sure when our struggling kids get to school that it's safe. So at my daughter's school now, because the levy didn't pass, parents are doing lunchtime and recess. And our EAs were able to take out kids that were struggling more, and now they're in the classroom more. So then the classroom gets more disruptive, and it just creates this cycle. So, what do you do when levies don't pass? And so Rep Evans is bringing a bill that creates a fund for schools that don't have the tax base to have a levy, to be able to have to fix crumbling infrastructure and things like that. Obviously, the bin levy also addressed things that, not things that are secured by a bond, and salaries as well. But that will be part of a bill moving forward next year. It is a tricky problem. But I just think we need, again, aligning with the governor's task force and making sure that really listening to teachers on the ground, because they know what's going on. It's easy for the legislator to be like, oh, we know what they need. Right. It's what do they need, and responding to that. That is something I've really learned in the last couple of years.
Keri?
Yeah, so I'm just going to put out a little disclaimer. When I'm talking on behalf of myself and not the school board. But I am going to take a minute and brag about our work on the school board and what we've done. So 2 things when I started on the school board, 2 things that really stuck out to me was A, we had a significant amount of kids that couldn't read at grade level. That was, to my core, disturbing, and it's something that I couldn't let go of. The other thing that that we wanted to really put our thumb on the scale on was attendance, right? Because it's really hard to get kids into their seats, especially after COVID, right? We kind of got into this for lots of reasons, right? We get into this habit per se of, not coming to school because maybe we have a cold, or maybe we just realize like we can there's other ways that we can do education. I'm really proud of the fact that we've moved the needle in the Redmond School District on both of those things. And we didn't have to wait for the state legislature or the governor to issue a proclamation or tell us that we needed to do it. We saw the need and we did something about it, right? So our kids that are reading at grade level, increasing. Our attendance rates are increasing. And I remember being in a meeting and saying, and getting pushback, and like, oh, this is hard, like this is impossible. And I'm like, yes, that's why we're here. It is 110% why we're here. We don't get to say, that's hard, sorry. We're not even gonna try, right?
What did you do to help increase attendance? What were the policy changes?
So I don't want to give away our secrets. So I have to brag about one of the principals at our school, and I didn't ask him to share the story, it's public knowledge, but
I'm sure he'll love it.
It's making them look good.
Love a shout out.
I know. I just usually like to ask permission first, but I am bragging about him.
Right.
So he, and I don't know where he got this idea. Maybe he made it up. I don't know, but it's they implemented this program at the middle school called A's, B's, and 93s. Catchy, it sticks with you. But we know that if you're successful in those three areas, you're going to be successful in high school. And in middle school, that's kind of their job, is to set you up to be successful in high school. So it's about A's, B's, 93s, right? So 93% attendance. So what he did was they saw that kids that were not showing up for school, they're calling, they're sending letters. I will admit, we got one of those letters. We travel a lot for sports, and we do things that are important to our family that require our kids to be out of school for those things, and we feel like this is the other thing. So, as parents, you also get to choose what adventures you get to go on and what experiences you want your kids to have. And quite frankly, some parents take their kids on vacation, and guess what? My 12-year-old son, 13-year-old son can't stay at home by himself. If we're going on a family vacation, he's going with us. So that part of attendance I wrestle with, because I feel like those family experiences are important too. And I'm rambling at this point, but the idea was that we're implementing these things. Once we see kids falling off the radar, right, in attendance, we're actively pursuing them, right, with letters and phone calls and communicating with parents and really bringing them in. And then we're celebrating those kids that achieved the A's, B's, 93s. I was in the room with lines of parents, and it was awesome to know that it's hard sometimes to get your kid to school, right? It's hard for kids who don't have a way to get to school sometimes. And so for them to recognize that is also, I think, an important piece, because it's hard work sometimes.
Thanks,
I mean, teenagers, that's a whole other thing.
That just reminded me of the similar thing to the principal. Part of the program is a walking school bus.
Yeah.
And Rep. Wynn started this in Portland 10 years ago when she was in absenteeism, and she would knock on doors and create a walking school bus, and then she could see what kids needed and increase attendance at that school by 60%. So it is a lot of our local people coming up with creative ideas. So how, as a state legislator, can we support those local and to uplift them? Because they know what their district needs.
Keri, I'm going to come to you with this question first. What is your stance on environmental issues, and how would you support or oppose measures related to climate change and conservation in the Senate?
Yeah, sorry, House. But this is an old one.
It's an old one.
Well,
In the House.
It's in the House, not Senate.
Oh, sorry.
You don't want to be in this.
I don't know, honestly, 4 years versus 2?
Okay, well, that part.
I mean,
That's
You're gonna
Let's
run
talk
a lot
about
more.
that.
You get to run a lot less.
2 years or-
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
perk.
Yeah.
Keri?
So solving climate change is an issue that deserves consideration across the world and in Oregon. So I'm for real solutions, not just making up ways to tax people. Cap and trade really was just another tax freeze on Oregon families, and right now our families and businesses can't afford taxes in that way. We're already a leader. Oregon's already a leader in the green economy and energy efficiency. There's some real opportunities in Oregon from hydro, wind, solar. Those should all be considered green energy. And the same, I'm going to keep coming back to wildfire. Like, we have to be able to also manage our budgets, right? So we can't put forth these policies that are going to break the backs of businesses and people, right? Energy prices are going up, heating, those types of things. I mean, we have to have balance. How are we, when we get out of balance, we need to take a look and say, hey, maybe we need to find a happy medium here.
Great, thank you. Want me to repeat the question?
Yes, sorry.
Sure. What is your stance on environmental issues, and how would you support or oppose measures related to climate change and conservation in the House?
So I teach environmental law and policy at Oregon Tech, and so I get to do a seminar series about this very topic in January, which I'm excited about. So I think it's such a big question, and it has so many different facets of what is environmental policy and how do we address the many challenges that we have, and then how can we also address cost and make sure that we're moving the needle in a way that's significant, right? So most consumers only consume 5% of greenhouse gases. So where are we targeting and where are we using our political capital to make sure we're moving the needle? One bill I was really excited about was it was an incentive program for our farmers to do soil sequestration, and they can sell their credits or get like that. That's a money-making venture and also good for the environment. So we did that program, but it's also kind of back to the energy plan. How are we making this all tie together to make sure that we have all the resources that we need? We know that with the drought, our hydro is going down. So when I think of environmental policy, I also think of water policy. So our new groundwater rules, which are also gave me gray hair. So we just got to a good place with that, being on the water caucus, but there's still a $1 billion worth of water infrastructure that we need. So really water conservation, forest management, and that looks different for every forest. It depends on what the fuels are at the bottom of the forest and how it's managed. It is just such a massive question, and I will say our natural resources are only 2% of our entire budget, and yet it affects our everyday life, and it's such a small percentage. But I guess my overall value around environmental policy is that it has to make sense. And I would say if there's only, I'm a proud Democrat, but if I push back on my party, sometimes we do things that feel good that don't move the needle. And I would rather use my political capital on things that move the needle in a significant way.
Cool. Let's move on. You mentioned a little bit about Measure 110. I'm going to talk about drug deflection a little bit. What do you see the legislature's role being? You're starting with this one, Emerson. Now that Oregon has largely repealed Measure 110 and introduced the drug deflection programs, since this came out of the legislature, what oversight should the legislature have now?
It's a great question, and a question I feel very passionately about, because we see how different counties are implementing this. And so we are a legislature for the whole state. Deschutes County is doing pretty well. We have our stabilization center. We had our stabilization center even before the repeal. And so we know how successful it is. I believe, and I can get the number for you, I think they're pulling off about 30% of 911 calls right now through just being able to drop people off or be able to take the calls. So that's really important. We gave $1.5 million to the stabilization center to stabilize their funding. But their funding is only there for, I think they've got 2 years of funding, and that's it. Multnomah County hasn't even opened theirs. That's unacceptable. Like, we really need to put the pressure on and accountability on to make sure that people have the resources that they need. Otherwise, that's the trust we build in the community, is that we said we're doing something, we need to do it. And so I think that the legislature should have a lot of oversight, and I've talked to their new DA, I went and met with him. And I know that there's a lot of internal struggle in that area of what this all should look like, but it's the taxpayers' dollars, and we need to build out programs that work and make sense, that, you know, keep people safe, give people the opportunity to get clean. But we need to be responsible, and we need to just get it open. It doesn't have to be perfect. Good is okay. Good is fine.
Want me to repeat the question?
No, I think I'm good, thank you. So I keep coming back to this question when I think about education and when I think about Measure 110 and the failed experiment. Really, at the end of the day, I think it's safe to say that. Where is the urgency in this? We passed, the legislature passed lots of bills with emergency clauses. Why wasn't this an emergency? We have record numbers of overdose deaths in the state of Oregon. We know this, including innocent children. People are dying in our streets, literally, and this is not an emergency. This is one of the things that gets me really fired up and really, it disturbs me. It stirs me up a little bit, because we're seeing things, the effects of things happening. And Emerson, you're right. We repealed Measure 110, right? People don't have to have their deflection program set up until September, right? The law didn't go into effect until September. Multnomah County still doesn't have their deflection program in place. We need to hold people accountable. This is an urgent matter. The fact that we're 45th in the nation in our education system is an urgent matter. The fact that we still have a solution, but still know people not moving forward with things that can help people. Again, just where's the urgency? It's something that, it gets me fired up.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently now there's galaxy gas in the schools. Have you heard about this?
I don't know. I've never heard of
I
that.
found out yesterday. It's like laughing gas, but flavored.
Ew.
Oh.
Every day there's something new for our kids. Terrifying.
I could make a lot of funny jokes
I know,
about
it's
that,
really-
but I won't, so.
Yeah, it's
Well, and
it's
I
set up.
always ask my kids things, and they're like, I'm not talking to you anymore.
Yeah, if you start talking to your kids about it, you realize how little you know about the spectrum of
Totally,
choices that they are
yeah.
being
To go to other people's
afforded.
kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's important to ask that question, like, when they do talk, like, do you want my help with this? Or can I do something about this? Because, again, I'm a person who wants to do something about it if it's an issue. So.
Well, I think, Keri, we're starting with you on this next one.
Sure.
As the state looks to overhaul how transportation is funded, what do you see as priorities on the roads for people in the district, and how would you propose changing the funding structure, if at all, to address ODOT's multi-billion-dollar budget shortfall?
Yeah, this is going to be a tricky one, and I think this is probably not the only agency in the state of Oregon that's going to have some tough decisions to make. And I think, honestly, those tough decisions are going to be coming to schools across the state. We actually saw that in the last year, where schools their budgets were being blown up and they were making cuts. So thankfully, our school district has been responsible with the funds that we had, and thankful to Kathy and Sharan for doing that good work. So we haven't had to make those tough decisions yet. Back to transportation, sorry, education's my wheelhouse. Transportation. So like I said last night, I love a good audit, and I feel like we probably need to take a look and see where we're leaking money, where maybe we could reallocate that somewhere else. And maybe with ODOT too, but other organizations as well.
Great. Can we repeat the question?
Transportation, how do we avoid?
Yeah, sort of like the shortfalls of the budget.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're looking at a $2 to $3 billion shortfall. With all the conversations I've had with ODOT and conveying what our community would like in the transportation package, it aligns with their themes, which is just safety and maintenance, making sure that our roads are safe and level graded. That's a huge issue. So, where do we get the money to do that? So with the declining gas revenues, with just even more fuel efficient cars, it's not just electric vehicles. When you buy an electric vehicle, some portion does go to that fund to maintain the roads. But right now we're having a disproportionate, right? So people who have the least fuel efficient cars are bearing the most, right? Which tends to be, kind of ends up being regressive tax. The people who have the most expensive cars are paying the least and actually doing the most damage because of the weight. It's certainly not a morality judgment, it's just, and then if you have a gas guzzler, an older car, you're paying the most taxes, which is kind of the opposite of Oregon's tax philosophy. And so really looking at that, does that look like a VMT? Rep. Levy has been running the VMT, Vehicles Mind Traveled group, for 2 years now, and I know is planning to talk about this more. That's a really challenging thing. It's a totally new way to track essentially paying for gas. And the gas tax is the most efficient tax we have because it's a terrible pun, but there's no leakage, right? You're taxed at the point of sale. And with a VMT, that's a bill that you have to pay, right? So there's leakage. It's not as efficient, but it might be more fair. But it's something that I think that should probably go to the voters because it is such a significant change in how we would manage paying for our roads.
So you're saying you support a gas tax?
No, I did not.
Okay, but you're suggesting that the legislature
Look at
put out there a gas tax to voters to choose?
no. So for vehicles miles traveled.
Okay,
So that would be in electric vehicles
okay.
that are not paying gas
Okay.
tax.
Keri, let me just follow on that. Looking at a gas tax, is that something, I mean, it's been floated to Ben voters have shot it down. But I hear over and over again from candidates in these things that it's something we should look at. Do you support looking at a gas tax?
Well, I mean, the state
I'm
has
a little
one.
bit, yeah, okay, thank you
You're
for
talking
that.
about
I'm like,
state
I'm a
gas
little bit
tax.
confused
Yeah, yeah.
because I
State.
feel like
Sorry,
we do
I-
have a gas tax. Okay, perfect. So first of all, there's lots of acronyms in education and I'm learning.
Sorry, vehicles miles
No,
traveled.
yeah, no, you explained it to me and I was like, thank you.
Sorry.
Because there's acronyms get thrown around a lot and sometimes you're like, what does that mean? And then you look it up and actually that's
Google.
not that's not what it means. So thank you for that. One thing you also brought up was ODOT debt service.
Oh, yes.
So I'm curious about that and I want to look into that because school districts also have debt service too, and so I'm just wondering
Sure.
how they're similar and different.
Do you support
yeah.
communities like Bend who are heavy on tourism,
Sure.
initiating gas taxes to support road infrastructure like what ODOT
I
needs?
think there has to be a way to capture it, and I'm not sure what that looks like yet. I can hear, I have someone in the back of my mind that's talking about how we capture traveling, people who come into Portland, right? And then they come into Bend, and how do we capture that revenue that we're maybe leaving in Portland or we're leaving in,
Sure.
you know.
Yeah.
So finding a way to capture that.
Is that tolls? I mean, that's one way.
Yeah,
That's
that
good.
is, and that's evidently that's a controversial thing, and I'm not sure that that's supported in Oregon either.
Yeah, we've supported editorially gas taxes here and watched them go down in flames, so
Yeah.
I'm always curious.
Well-
And it's not currently up for conversation, but increasingly.
Tolling is actually.
Yeah, I mean, in the
It's
Portland
in the
area.
Portland
Because
area.
of Flint
I
hearing
just
totally.
mean here, where we live.
Oh, okay. So
But
Yeah.
with the gas tax, the reason that I don't think it's a good idea is because we're already gonna come back to the same problem. Cars
Yeah.
are just gonna get more fuel efficient. And so it's always gonna be going like this. And so it's just not as sustainable long-term in the way that it always has been. It's always gonna go down.
Yeah, if people convert, you mean it gets more efficient, if people
Well,
convert
even if
more
people
to
don't
electric?
convert, cars are simply more gas efficient and they
Yeah.
continue to get more gas efficient. And so even say you add more, it's still going down.
Yeah.
And so you'd be constantly going back to the well.
Not to get too derivative, but isn't some revenue better than none? I mean, over time, I have an electric vehicle,
So he's trying
people
to get
are
out
always-
of pay. He wants to get
Yeah.
all
So
the
you're not
It's not
taking your fair
Hey,
share.
I've heard the argument and I'm not gonna argue that part, but when they talk about gas going away, the threshold that I see from companies like Chevron is 20 years and their stock's going up. They're definitely not in a mode where they're thinking,
But-
oh, poor us, we're gonna run out of payers
Well,
or
also,
buyers.
Chevron and Shell own a lot of green. I mean,
Mhm.
they're
investors.
they are one of
Sure.
some of the biggest investors. But our gas revenue went down 50%. So I guess I see what you're saying. Like something is better than nothing, but that doesn't plow the roads.
Does it sound like it's super theoretical, but are the vehicle miles traveled, is it just for electric cars or?
I
is
think
it-
that would be the
okay.
first step,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
because that's not paying their share right now.
Yeah.
But what we need to know is what we've been talking about with some of the groups is how much are they paying up front when they buy their vehicle, and then what does that look like through damage to the road over time?
Mhm.
And so it's for people with the math much smarter than me that would know how that all works.
And I'm not laughing at you.
No,
I just thought in my
Yeah.
mind that I know that there's somebody out there that has a really great solution to this, and
Yeah.
it's we just need to talk to the right people. I
Sure.
think.
They all come with controversy, I would say. Every single solution comes with controversy.
Well, because even
So-
with that one, you're
Yeah.
gonna have to figure out how do you track people's mileage,
Exactly,
right?
right.
Which gets into
Thank you.
privacy.
Oh, the
potential.
privacy
Yeah.
is the huge
Yeah.
part of it, and that's why I think it would have to go to the voters. But it's tricky, right? Because we've been reliant on this one source for so long, and then that source is changing.
If you have an electric vehicle and you think you still have privacy, you're kidding yourself. Those vehicles know exactly
Or
where
phone.
you are at every minute.
It really
Yeah.
is. Those tracking
Right.
things are really spoilers for Christmas shopping.
But we should move on. This is,
Jennifer, I think you're up, right?
Yeah, my question is next. And I'm sorry, who is starting this time? Did Julie?
Carrie, just
I think
that
I
you
went.
were the end, or wait, no,
I think I
Carrie
got you
started.
out.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
sorry.
sorry.
Okay, so it's to you, Emerson. I apologize. So water rights and looking at water rights and usage in light of the ongoing drought and expected population growth. I think you touched on this a little bit, but if you could expand on how you would address this issue and how you think of it in this district.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one thing that I really advocated for, and the Water Caucus has advocated for as well, is place-based management, so that each basin is in charge of, I won't say their own destiny, but within the confines of state law, right? Because every geology is so different. So Deschutes County, we have porous rock, but nothing compared to Crook County, whose rock is even more porous, right? So juniper looks different over there. And so we need to have rules that align with our basin and our basin's geology. So we have new groundwater rules coming, and we just have fundamentally a shortage of water. So what does that look like? And what I think it looks like is place-based management with mitigation credits. And that is what Redmond is looking at too. Redmond actually has a lot of mitigation credits. Bend is short on mitigation credits. So when you have a parcel, you buy up their water rights. And I think that's a really great balance for municipal water use, but it also has to come with conservation. So Redmond is talking about incentivizing lawns or not having lawns, and typically that's not something you even touch because it's only 1 to 2% of water use. But now we're at the point where we're talking about that 1 to 2%, and continuing to pipe canals. Even though the challenge part with we pipe canals, but now we have less groundwater, so it's everything ebbs and flows. No pun intended. And also investing in water infrastructure. Again, we have so many opportunities to shore up what we have, and that has been really hard, especially like in Eastern Oregon where we're dealing with nitrates. A lot of those communities, again, cannot support a bond or a levy to be able to build these projects. So how are we not just looking at our own community, but the whole state and our entire water supply? It is also so interconnected. People are pumping from the basin or for the Columbia Basin. Like, these resources are not infinite, and so how can we make the best of what we have and get ahead of it with the mitigation credit program, which we've had for 25 years. And Deschutes Basin, if you look at Washington Creek, like that used to be dry. That was through a process of mitigation credits. And it's been a collaborative process that's supported by all of our mayors from Maupin to Bend. And so really asking the legislature, because this is about the sunset, to renew that. And I'm doing that. It's called the Deschutes Basin Water Plan or something like that.
I'm really glad you brought up the individual basins, because we do need to look at individual basins and how they're different, because what works in Portland doesn't work here. What works in even Crook County, even neighboring, neighboring communities. So I'm thankful for that, and that's also why I'm an advocate for local decision making, right? Because again, what works in Portland isn't probably going to work here. We have different considerations, rainfall, different needs, farming communities, things like that. So It will be an ongoing conversation, for sure.
As somebody who lives in Redmond, are you concerned about the amount of groundwater that it will take to fuel the development there in your community?
It's always going to be a concern. What I think I'm more concerned about is the groundwater rules that the state is enacting.
So do you agree with those, or it sounds like you don't?
Well, I don't, in the sense that our cities have an obligation to provide water to their community, and if the state's making rules that say, well, you know, we can't issue you a permit, then we have a problem, right? So we need to find a way to make that work and figure that out, because cities have to provide water, and that's what I kept hearing Mayor Fitch say over and over again. Like, we have an obligation and a duty, and it's in the law to provide this service for our community. And then you have the state saying, oh, sorry, like, we have these rules and we're gonna do it a different way, and it means we're not gonna issue you a permit for a well. That's a problem.
I think we're in a good place though now. In the last 2 weeks, it's been a tough battle in Redmond, and all credit to Mayor Fitch and their incredible city council. We're in a good spot with the water department now. I think we have a plan with mitigation that we can get a permit. It comes with a lot of conservation tools. It has been a heck of a summer with the water department. We have gone round and rounds. They probably see me and don't want to see me. But I will say, it came together in a pretty collaborative way with the water department, and I really felt like, and I can't believe I'm saying this, that they were really listening and understanding us by the end and got to a good place. And I think we will end up having place-based management, but as far as Redmond's groundwater and aquifer, I think we have a plan. I think we're in a good spot.
So you think that they're going to approve the permit now?
Yeah, it will come with stipulations, and
Yeah.
Mayor Fitch can answer this better than I
Yeah.
can, but yeah, so it will come with stipulations, a plan for conservation, you know, the many mitigation credits that Redmond has. Yeah, it will not be easy, but I think there's a plan.
Mm-hmm.
And that Mayor Fitch worked his heart out on that.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Keri, I'm going to come to you for this one first, and I believe I'm in sync.
I know we need like a little thing to pass back and forth or something.
Walkouts were a big controversy for the legislature this year. Would you participate in a walkout if your party was doing so for any reason? What's your position on walking out?
Listen, so I think you're talking about the Senate Republicans, and the fact of the matter is there wouldn't need to be walkouts if we had balance in the legislature, right? Having a balanced legislature forces the different parties to come together and work together, rather than saying, well, we have the majority vote, so, you know, Emerson, if you want to take this safe vote, fine, if you feel like it. But when you're in the majority party, a lot of times you get unbalanced legislation, and I think that's where we're at and what we're seeing.
I want to just push about this a little bit, because it's really, I would love a yes or no question or answer. And also, I mean, I would say that whoever was in the legislature was voted in there by the people who are living in Oregon. So just, you know, in any circumstances, would you walk out?
I think it would have to depend on what it was, to be perfectly honest. I think that if we're bargaining in good faith, again, there is no reason for it. But if we're simply saying, like, this is what it is, and there's no collaboration, no cooperation, and we're just saying, no, sorry, you know, I think it really depends on what it is. And I would think that, you know, well, yeah.
That's fair. Emerson, back to you. What walkouts, would you participate if your party was doing so for any reason? What's your opinion on it?
I've lived through a walkout. It was awful. There's so much other things that go on in a walkout. So many things, so many bills die. I had a caller of all of our school districts. I think I've said this before to you guys, but to say they had enough cash on hand if we couldn't pass a bill by September, that's the real consequence of it. And none of those senators who walked out had to make those phone calls. It was us in our community saying, okay, do you have enough for this? Do you have enough for this? that feels like a dereliction of duty. Like, it was a low point for me. And thankfully our districts actually did have enough cash on hand for various reasons. I wish people saw those phone calls. I wish they understood that's what it really does. That's what the cost really is. It's fundamentally about budgets and being able to do our work. It's, I will say, I do not support walkouts or the walkout process. We're there to do good work and to do our jobs. I think both parties could have handled the situation a little better. I think they kind of went with the nuclear option both first. If they look back, maybe we could have made some different choices. But I think all of us serving in the legislature, it's a citizen legislature, most of us are away from our kids. And it's just the feeling of sitting there like, I'm here to work. And is this all for me? I think, and that's really a really disheartening process to be a part of. But in the end, in the short session and the next session, it was one of the best sessions we ever had. It felt like magic because that really wasn't on the table. It was so collaborative, and I was like, oh, this is the work, like this is how it's supposed to be. And I think that's our
Maybe
goal.
it was a good thing.
It was special.
Yeah.
Whatever it was.
Maybe it changed people's opinions about how they work.
Deadlines.
So I just want to say that
Sure.
this is a tool that both Republicans and Democrats have used, and I remember actually I'm on the school board, right, in Redmond, and so I remember those conversations. I remember our superintendent sitting in front of us saying, you know, we'd like to present you with our budget, but like we just really can't, and we know we're going to need to make adjustments. So I've lived through that piece too of that uncertainty, but the one thing in my experience on the school board that I know is that we've been able to have these tough conversations, work through them, and improve outcomes for kids. And that's what I will do in the legislature too. I've attended every school board meeting. I take on extra committee work when I can. And I step up to see how things work firsthand in our district. And I'm going to do that in Salem. I will bring that same level of dedication and commitment to Salem. And I think that's what my track record shows on the school board. So.
Right.
Okay. I want to ask, start with Emerson for this. Knowing that, you know, Oregon has already voted or enshrined protections for abortion, if a vote to protect abortion rights came up again in the legislature, how would you vote?
I always will protect a woman's right to choose. From family planning to IVF, all of it, and have a proven record on that.
Thank you. Would you want me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Okay. If a vote to protect abortion rights came up again in the legislature, knowing that, you know, we've had a significant movement on that, how would you vote?
Okay. So the reality is, it hasn't come up. And the bill that did come up actually expanded abortion rights in Oregon. And so I stand with the 80% of people who support some limits on abortion. And that's including, because at the end of the day, the reality is that abortion is legal up to and through the moment of birth in Oregon.
Okay.
Juliana.
Next question.
Then we're at the last one, and we've got 8 minutes, so we're
Okay.
right on time.
Awesome.
Okay. We are starting with Keri,
Oh,
I
that's
believe. Right? So what sets you apart from your opponent?
Oh, this is an interesting question. No offense,
Okay, you
but
can go for it.
yeah.
I have thick skin and a short
No,
memory.
It's, well, no offense, but I honestly don't spend a lot of time thinking about you. I'm really sorry.
A lot of people don't.
Or just like closing remarks, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Why should voters vote for you? You know, that's all in
Why
my
you
bubble.
should think about me more.
I honestly, as much as I would love to, my brain is filled with so many things right now. It's like
I'm sure.
drinking from a
Yeah.
fire hose. I feel like in these interviews, like it's always like, oh yeah, oh I need to know about that. And even going to Salem, Emerson, you probably experienced this as a freshman, right? Like there's so many things that you need to know. And the awesome part is that
Crazy.
it's, you know, having lived in Central Oregon and lived in Oregon for my whole life, I think about when things like that come up, I think about, oh, so-and-so, like, they did this when they, you know, were in their 20s or 30s, they had a job doing this or, whatever. And so I'm thankful that I have that network and that support system of people to go back to and say, hey, remember when this was happening? Or what did you guys think about this? Or because of those things that happened, what would you do differently? And I think that's something that when I think about local decision making and the awesome things that we are doing in Redmond and the awesome things that we have presented, in our community on the school board to raise our reading, kids who can read at grade level, and then our graduation rates. When I think about those things, that's what gets me excited about continuing to do this job and to do this work, is because we do have really good ideas that come from Central Oregon, and I think it's important to advocate for those, and then with a sense of urgency. I think that I realize I'm just one voice, but I'm also a voice that's going to carry that sense of urgency when I see things that deserve the urgency and the action, and to make things happen.
Thank you. Do you need to repeat?
Yeah. No. First, I love serving in the legislature. It is so much fun, even though it's so hard. It is. We're both moms. It's a lot of time away from your family, and that is incredibly hard. But it is because of the good work that we can do. Like the insurance law that I passed, people have access to their medication now. And I was nominated for Legislator of the Year from the Pacific Northwest Bleeding Disorders because of it. And now I get to speak nationally and teach other legislators how to pass this exact same bill, to be able to open up access it's a kind of narrow for people that need biologics, right? And we're able to take on the insurance companies. Like that shows the impact of the work and what we can actually do in this job. We can't fix everything, but there are a lot of things that we can fix that have a direct impact on people's lives here. And I'm proud that I passed both my personal bills as a legislator. I passed, and it was as a freshman legislator, and that we got the school safety program, and that I did the things that I said that I would do, and I'm really proud of that. We also have so much more to do. I feel like I have a great reputation for being a bridge builder, for taking on very boring insurance and finance tasks that no one else wants to do, and really enjoying them. So I feel like I do. They call me the lovable nerd in the legislature, and it is truly a joy to serve this community, and I hope to continue to do so.
I just wanted to say thank you to you. It stirred something about being a mom, and I just wanted to say thank you for adjusting the schedule from 8 to 9. So part of my day, and sometimes the joy of my day is dropping my kids off at school, and so I really appreciate being able to do that, because, as you know, when you're serving in these capacities, your time with your family gets a little squeezed, and there's some times where you're like, actually, I really just want to take my kids to school today and do those normal things.
I know.
So thank you for
I know what you mean.
Happy to do
yeah,
that.
I know you know what I mean.
My daughter complained about Hebrew school the whole way, and that I am ruining her life, and why does she have to go tonight, and she can just do her bat mitzvah in English. The whole way. I mean, from garage to drop off. Like, it was not a break. She's a good advocate.
Yeah, I mean, we understand. I'm very glad that we got you both in this room. We did it. We persevered and made it happen. So just thanks to both of you. And we have to have a rapid ending right now. Appreciate your time.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Nice to see you guys.
Nice to see you.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.